I'm Mark Ryan. This is Super Review, and this is the new Truthear Gate, or as some people, maybe just me, are calling it, the Gato. This is Truthear's latest IM. It's like 19 bucks. It's super cheap, and it is their replacement to the Hola. And kind of surprisingly, the Hola came out just about a year and a half ago. Again, it was also around 20 bucks, and that was a really popular IM that, again, surprisingly just kind of disappeared a couple of months ago, and people were wondering, where is the Hola? Well, here's the Hola-ish. It's the new Gate, and it is a different IM, although there's a lot of similarities with it. And I'll be honest, there's one thing in particular about this IM, and specifically the return of the Hola, that has got me pretty hyped, and it might not be exactly what you're thinking, but we'll talk about that. So I've had the Gate. I keep wanting to call it the Hola. It's not the Hola. I've had the Gate for about a week now. I've been listening to it, comparing it with some other IMs around 20 bucks. And I'm ready to let you know what I think about this guy. So now a quick shout out to Shenzhen Audio for sending this in for review. If you want to check out the Gate, anything else they've got, I've got them linked down below. Otherwise, let's dive to the table. Let's talk about what you get inside the physical package of this IM. We'll talk about the physical form factor of it. Then we'll get into talking about the sound, some comparisons with some other IMs in its price range, and then finally a score. So the packaging that you get is what you see here on the table. It's pretty modest, but for a $19 IM, frankly, it's actually not bad. So the packaging, nice and simple, nice and small. I like that they put the frequency response on the back of the box, although I will say having a single frequency response in isolation, it's kind of hard to interpret. So we'll look at the frequency response on Squiglink in a bit. In addition to the box, you do get, of course, silicone ear tips. And in fact, they include quite a few silicone ear tips, including two different styles. So there's like a wide bore style and a more typical style. And I recommend, as always, just try both styles, see what works better in your ear. There may be some sonic differences, but honestly, it's really going to come down to how it couples with your particular ear. I've been just sticking with the stock narrow bore, and that's what I've been listening with, and it fit me pretty well. Okay, the ear tips aside, you also get this little carry case, which is nice. You know, it's certainly not the most protective carry case. It's pretty thin. It's soft entirely, but it does have a nice little magnetic kind of automatically closing mechanism. I don't know, I dig it. It's simple. It's, again, not super expensive or super premium, but it's a $19 IM. So what do you expect? Well, you expect this. So let's talk about the build quality of the IM itself. And this is where we're going to get into talking about the reason that I'm actually really hyped that this IM is back is because of this cable. Yeah, I'm not joking. Okay. This is a fairly basic cable, as you can see. Like, it just, I don't know, looks like a random run-of-the-mill black cable, but it does a lot of really simple things quite well. And it means that this has actually been one of my favorite cables to use on other IMs. Okay, I actually have, here you go, here's a tray of spare Holas that I have because I bought a bunch of Holas just to have this cable and put it on other IMs. In fact, much more expensive IMs, because it's just a nice, pleasant cable. It behaves well. It's got a small little connector down there. You can see it rotary wraps well. It's got a small, let's punch in on that, chin cinch, or a small Y-split, which I like to see. And then it does have a very functional chin cinch that actually stays in place, which is nice. I know that seems, again, like kind of basic stuff, but a lot of IM cables don't get it right. And the Hola cable, of all things, or now the Gate cable, on a $19 IM gets it perfectly right. The other thing that I really like is, you know, you've got your preformed ear hooks, your standard 2-pin connector, so you can swap this out with other cables or put this obviously on another 2-pin IM. But what I also really like is just these small 2-pin connectors. A lot of IMs have really large metal connectors that I guess look fancier and look more expensive, but in practice, this is peak cable for me. This is what I want my cables to behave and even look like, to be honest. I like this cable a lot. Anyway, the other thing I guess that's worth calling out real quick as we're on the topic of cable is that unlike the Hola, the Gate is also available in a white colorway. So you can get this cable and this IM in a white or a black color. I've actually already ordered a white one for myself because I want a white Hola cable. Yeah, kind of excited about that, I'll be honest. Okay, if you're not that excited about the cable, let's talk about the rest of the IM. The earpiece is here. The shape seems like it's overall pretty much exactly the same. I'm looking for one of my spares over here. Pretty much exactly the same shape as the original Hola. Some people were saying it felt a little bit different, but to my ear, honestly, it really does feel the same. So there is a modest wing here in the back, but overall shape here on the outside, it is effectively the same. Now, the one difference you might notice is that the gate is made out of a glossy plastic, whereas the Hola is made out of kind of like a matte, soft plastic. To be honest, I prefer the plastic quality on the Hola. I think this thing feels nicer. It feels higher quality. And I wonder if part of the reason that they sunset this thing a little bit earlier than I expected was because it might be a little bit more expensive to make than the new gate is. But that's just conjecture. I have no idea. Apart from the plastic quality itself, just looking at the outside, I actually much prefer the way the gate looks like. The Hola, this pattern on here is fine. It's a little bit random, but it's fine looking. The gate here, however, I think is actually pretty cool looking. You know, it's just a clear plastic shell. You can see into the back of the dynamic driver. You can see the wiring. You can see a little bit of glue. Like, it's not the prettiest internals of an IM. If you want something like super pretty, take a look at like the Moondrop S8, but Moondrop S8, it's like a $700 IM. So for 19 bucks, frankly, not too bad. And again, with this cable and decent accessory package, I'm pretty happy with that stuff. Okay, let's get into talking about the sound on the gate. And like I have been doing, we're gonna go over to SquigLink. I already alluded to this, but head over to SquigLink to take a look at the frequency response, which is what we got up here on the screen right now. If you want to check this out for yourself, I've got it linked in the description down below, but let's just talk about this, okay? So obviously this looks a little bit different than the frequency response we saw on the back of the box because it's a different rig, and all rigs they'll capture slightly different data. But if we compare this with other IMs that I've also measured on the same rig, you can start to get a good sense for how this thing is tuned. And just kind of right off the gate, like, this is a good tuning. This is a very good tuning, a very modest tuning. It's got a little bit of a bass bump to it. And if you look down here, maybe you would say that it measures a little bit on the forward side, a little bright in the vocals, but not overly so, less so than like the Harman target, which generally I think is a good thing. You can see my target here in the lighter dotted line, where you can see that, yeah, I would still call the gate like a mild V-shaped sound signature, but it's a pretty modest V-shaped sound signature, to be honest. Like, this is mostly just kind of like a neutral-ish, slightly bright, with a tasteful bass boost sound signature. And for 19 bucks to get a sound signature this, I'm gonna call it mature. It's honestly, it's pretty nice to see. Let's compare it versus the Hola though, because this is where it might be a little bit controversial what they've done with the sound. I prefer the sound, let's just be clear, I prefer the sound of the gate to the Hola, but it might be controversial, okay? So this darker line that I've pulled up is the frequency response of the Hola, and there's two main differences that you're gonna see in this frequency response. One is that down below, there's less bass in the gate. The gate is definitely a less bassy IM, and I know it only looks like maybe a smidge less bass versus the Hola, but that smidge less bass is kind of carried throughout from everything below 1,000 hertz, and that has a pretty significant effect in terms of the body and the sense of weight behind the sound. I would say that the gate is definitely a thinner, more neutral sound signature because of that. And then there's kind of a double whammy, whereas up here in the lower treble, upper mid-range area, you've got a little bit of extra boost on the gate, whereas the Hola is a little bit more relaxed. And I think those things in combination mean that the gate versus the Hola, in fact, let me pull my Hola in, which is on this strange cable, not its stock cable, because its stock cable is being used by something else. But in combination, those two changes, this being a little bit lighter in the bass region, this being a little bit lighter in the treble, has the effect that makes the gate overall just a brighter tuned, a livelier tune. And again, to my preferences, I actually prefer the gate, because where I found the Hola, it was okay, right? You know, it's $20 IM. Certain expectations are fairly modest. It was a little bit too bassy for my taste, and maybe more than just being a little bit too bassy for my taste. I found that the Hola was a little bit congested sounding. Imaging on it was nothing to write home about. Again, 19 bucks, whatever. But the gate, I actually think, makes a meaningful improvement in that regard. If you like to hear more of the separation between sounds and the imaging and the positioning and the 3D-ness of audio, I think the Gate does a better job, a much better job to my ear. Maybe you get a better sense of depth with the added bass here on the Hola, but to my ear, I actually prefer the Gate. Yeah, the technical performance is pretty good. I would say that the treble can get a little bit on the slightly strident side, like it can just be a little bit edgy in the vocals. But to be honest, that's mostly true of a lot of IMs in this price range. The other stuff that's worth comparing, and I'll pull up some stuff real quick. Unfortunately, I don't have the one that would actually be the closest analog, which would be the original 7Hz Zero. I've only got the 7Hz Zero 2. If you've heard the 7Hz Zero, the original one, that was also kind of like neutral on the somewhat bright side. I would say that the Gate, from memory, is not quite that bright. So it's somewhat of an in-between. In fact, you can kind of think of all the frequency responses of these guys as like being more or less, you know, some version of this curve, but at various degrees of tilt, right? Think of it tilting clockwise to get warmer and bassier, and counterclockwise to get brighter and livelier and more neutral. In fact, here is kind of the frequency responses of a bunch of IMs in this price range. And you can see in red, that is the Gate frequency response. Maybe a little bit hard to pick out, but you know, use your imagination. The red line there is the Gate, and you can kind of see it kind of falls in the middle of a bunch of these. I would say it's not the brightest, it's not the leanest, but it's also not the bassiest. It's just kind of a nice, balanced, well-tuned IM. But yeah, back to the comparison. So we already compared it with the Hola, so I'll leave that one out, versus the 7Hz Zero 2. So this is the new one. This is definitely the bassier IM. So if you are looking for the sound of the Hola, but actually with a little bit more treble excitement, I think that the 7Hz Zero 2 does a pretty good job of that. So you're going to get some more of the imaging performance that you get here with the Gate, but with more of the bass that you get here from the Hola. I think overall, because of that, maybe it becomes a little bit more V-shaped in its sound signature, and because of that, the mid-range isn't quite as standout as I would say that it is here. So if you're into vocal content, you'll probably prefer the Gate. If you're into, I don't know, pop type, just like contrasty sound, you might actually prefer the Zero 2. Personally, between these two, I would pick the Gate, but that's because of my preferences. Another one to pull in real quick here. Now these price ranges are getting a little bit more divergent. The Tin Hi-Fi C2 is what I've got here. This guy's around 30 bucks, so it's 50% more, but still pretty stinking cheap. This one I would similarly call more V-shape than the Gate, just because it sounds more contrasty. But I also think that the technical performance in this guy is kind of a step above, maybe a couple steps above, to be honest. I think the technical performance in the C2 is what makes this thing pretty stinking stand out. I think that it is a well-balanced V-shaped sound signature, and you get a really nice technical performance that the Gate, you know, does an okay job approximating. But if you're willing to spend an extra 10 bucks, I think that the C2 is, to my ear, more exciting. And then finally, we've got the Moondrop Land, which is, again, another step up in price, so maybe not the fairest comparison. This thing's like double in price. It's about 40 bucks. But I bring it up specifically because I think the frequency responses are actually pretty similar. In fact, let me pull that up real quick on SquigLink as I talk about this. Let me type in LAN. That was not me typing in LAN. That was me typing in LA. I'll type in LAN real quick and pull this up. So you can see they're pretty similar. In fact, if you look at this, it actually looks like the LAN would be the leaner, less bassy set. Interestingly, I bring these up because I actually find the LAN to be kind of more warmer, more relaxed sound. I think that the treble on the Gate just ends up being a little bit more prominent in the mix than what the frequency response, at least on my rig, necessarily shows. So between these two, I would actually say that this is kind of like the more laid back set. And technical performance is probably pretty similar between them. Neither of them are standout, but I think they're definitely a step up above the Hola. And yeah, depending on what you prefer, you may or may not prefer any one of these IMs. They're all honestly pretty good picks. If you've only got 40 bucks, 30 bucks, 20 bucks to spend, these are all pretty decent little IMs, but we are here talking about the Gate. So let me conclude this guy by wrapping it up. Yep, so that is the Truthear Gate. 19 bucks, nice frequency response, nice accessories, stellar cable. Really, I can't understate how hyped I am about the cable being back. But yeah, I don't know, out of 5 stars, I'm gonna give the Truthear Gate a solid 4 stars. If you want to check it out, of course, I got it linked in the description down below. And while you're down there, if you haven't already, please do hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ding the YouTube bell, and I'll catch you on the next super review. Cheers.
Joined with the force of reviews, we now have the tools to brave the misleading world of audio fools. Hey, this review is super, and so are you. Grab your headphones, sniff a graph, and share your thoughts in this pursuit. Let's get into the future.